welcome to this week's edition of Tommy vs. Reality. I'm here with my friend Chad. I'm Other Chad, and we will be commentating this particular internet review just for you. Isn't that right, Chad? I couldn't agree more, Other Chad. Especially because it's my job, and if I disagree with you, I get fired. Delightful. Anyway, Tommy Tealhat is going to be reviewing a new show that he discovered fairly recently, and by new, I of course mean 10 years ago. But he discovered it just now, so it's probably new to him, isn't that right, Chad? Indeed it is, Other Chad. It's a show called Pete vs. Life. A situation comedy that seems to mirror the very situation we find ourselves in, where we're commentating over somebody's review of a show where people are commentating over somebody's life. I believe this is what analysts would call meta, although it's also very possible. I'm gonna have to interrupt you there, Chad, because the review is getting ready to start. Let's take a look, shall we? Okay, so far pretty standard review type thing. The intro is nothing especially new. Indeed, it signifies his typical lazy, uninspired MS Paint style, borrowing title cards from places like IMDb and Wikipedia on top of things he drew himself. And the review is getting ready to start. Let's sit back and listen, shall we? I'm not going to get into an especially lengthy commentary on the kind of TV shows you find on Pluto TV. Suffice to say, a lot of them are generally not worth reviewing like the movies are, because a lot of them are just shit reality television from the golden age of reality television from throughout the mid to late 2000s, when there was a writer's strike and the networks figured out their way around it by incorporating television that doesn't usually have writers. So, you know, prepare for a lot of like Dog the Bounty Hunter, a lot of Discovery Channel stuff, and a lot of the worst programming TLC has had to offer over the last decade, like Toddlers and Tiaras and... ugh. Oh, and a jab at reality television! Definitely well placed if I do say so myself. Wouldn't you agree, Chad? I suppose. Frankly, if you ask me, I believe that his opening monologue about the ins and outs of Pluto TV is highly unnecessary. True, maybe only 3 or 4 people actually use the app. However, I feel like he should spend less time talking about Pluto TV itself and more time talking about the subject of his review. Well, it looks like he's getting ready to add the next portion of the review to the review, so let's see if he does just that, shall we?
There are some sitcoms in there as well, a lot of which are from the 90s, and a lot of which are shows that I didn't realize lasted this long. Did you know that Third Rock from the Sun had 6 seasons? I didn't even know it got past season 2, honestly. Wow, I got some serious catching up to do on that one. Then you get to an oddity like Pete vs. Life, a show that I never even heard of. It's actually fairly recent compared to a lot of the stuff on Pluto TV's TV show section. And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm gonna check this out. I'm not sure what this is, but it has to be funny. I mean, it's in the British TV section. I mean, that instantly means funny, says this fan of Monty Python, Blackadder, and God only knows what other British comedies out there.
And we're finally at the review. It took him long enough. Let's see what he has to say, shall we?
Pete vs. Life is some of that classic British weird humor that I have grown to love and adore. It's basically a play-by-play show where 2 commentators are commentating, but instead of on soccer or football or baseball or whatever, you know, cricket, any of those sports, they're commentating on the day-to-day life of a guy named Pete. Pete is a sports writer who, at any point in the show, is either between jobs or he's currently got a really sweet gig that's on the verge of collapsing. He's also got a really lousy social life. He is basically human garbage personified. In fact, while I wouldn't say he is the #1 worst human being on the planet, I would definitely say he ranks somewhere in the top, maybe 20, perhaps, for the sake of humor at least. Honestly, this show is not what I would consider binge-worthy. It's not a bad show by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I like the concept and I really enjoyed watching it from start to finish. Thing is, though, one episode really kind of tells you how this show goes. It's a very formulaic show from start to finish. Pete gets himself into a situation that he has to lie about. The lies keep piling up and piling up. And then by the end of the episode, the lies have basically been revealed, and Pete is basically left in the gutter to wallow in misery because that's basically hilarious to British people.
So far, I'd say that he's doing a pretty good job of reviewing the show, wouldn't you, Chad? Yes and no, other Chad. I do feel like it took him a long time to get to the review. However, now that he's actually in the review, he's doing adequately. I just fear that some people may fast forward through this in order to get to the actual review itself. Furthermore, I'm noticing a lot of jump cuts and choppy editing. It leads me to think that maybe there were a lot of things that were scrapped initially, possibly out of a fear that maybe it would just sound awkward, or maybe it would anger the wrong person. The typical of, I'm gonna have to interrupt you there, Chad, because I'm afraid he's going to keep going. Let's see what else he has to say.
It's a very formulaic show. If you've seen one episode, you've probably seen all the episodes, but that being said, I did not hate this show. I actually managed to watch it from start to finish, and I genuinely enjoyed most of the show. Granted, a lot of it wasn't really funny so much as it was just sort of facepalm worthy. Oh my god, stop, you are digging yourself in so deep. But that's part of the humor, you see. I can already name at least 2 friends in my immediate circle who are gonna hate the show because of that, but I don't hate it.
Oh dear, that was a misstep. Do explain, Chad. Well, other Chad, he just made reference to people he knows in real life, in a manner that could easily be interpreted as a slight. It's definitely something that will make people angry in the immediate, and will be used as some sort of leverage point in the long term. I see. Yes, well, it turns out the event that he's speaking of is a time he introduced his friends to the increasingly poor decisions of Todd Margaret, a show featuring a compulsive liar that drove at least one of his friends in his immediate circle absolutely insane with rage rather than the intended effect of amusement. I see. Well, that's probably going to go against his score or something. Do we even have a scoring system? I don't know. Let's just watch the rest of the review.
Pete finds himself in a lot of situations, but there's a lot of constants. Like, for example, his roommate from Zimbabwe is always the quirky, neurotic guy who's always doing weird things, like going on a campaign to subsist entirely on fruit that he found in the ground and in the dumpster. He's also got his friend, I want to say Alan, who is the one who is basically the ultimate definition of pussy whipped. There's Anna, who is the one who has basically pussy whipped him. There's Chloe, I think her name is, the psychotically eco-friendly one who is like the on-again, off-again girlfriend. There's Jake, there's the guy who's basically the opposite of Pete in the sense that everything goes exactly the way he wants, as opposed to life basically turning around and taking the world's biggest taco dump on him. These are all constants, and you can already guarantee where some of the plot points are going to go based on the fact that these characters are going to be regular players in the episode. And whether or not you like these kind of archetypes is entirely up to you. I didn't seem to have a problem with a lot of them. I only just thought this show was pretty funny, really. Overall, I would call Pete vs. Life a palate cleanser, if nothing else. It's the kind of show that you can watch after a huge marathon of binge-watching something that's big and deep and mind-blowing, and you need something to come down to, but you don't want to really, disconnect yourself from, streaming just yet. You want to watch something that's not as challenging, it's pretty mindless, and it has a formula that's easy to follow, and you can come back to it whenever you want, because you don't have to watch all 2 seasons. This is basically Pete vs. Life in a nutshell. I give Pete vs. Life 3 hats out of 4.
And we have the score, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed. So, what did you think of the review, Chad? Well, other Chad, it was a bit rambly for my taste. He did eventually communicate the point he was trying to make, although I felt like he kinda stuttered and stammered his way in points, particularly towards the end before he actually gave the score proper. Maybe not a sign of a professional, but at least he got the point across. It should satisfy his fairly small subscriber base, if nothing else. Indeed it should. Well, all that's left to do is give the proper sign-off. Let's see how he handles this one.
And that's going to do it for this week's edition of It Came from Pluto TV. Again, I'm probably not going to review any TV shows from this platform ever again because, like I said, a lot of it's like reality TV garbage that's not worth acknowledging, or sitcoms that are so time-consuming and have so many seasons that it's really not worth wasting too much time on, and etc. But in the meantime, I'll be sure to have another review out for you, and in the meantime, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, ring-a-ding the bell. Remind me that my life matters, even though a lot of you apparently think it doesn't, because fuck you. I want to watch somebody who actually knows what they're talking about, etc., etc. Go away, random teal-hatted guy.
Oh, that's not a good ending at all to a review, is it, Chad? Indeed, it's not, other Chad. It's the kind of passive-aggressive ending that assures the people who are already following him that he hates every single one of his followers, while simultaneously discouraging other people from following him because he's a passive-aggressive douchebag. Furthermore, if the Wings of Redemption storyline has taught us anything, it's that kind of lashing out at your own user base that guarantees that the only people that will follow you are angry trolls who delight in making fat people cry. Well, I don't know if they'd go that far necessarily, although you have been right in the past. So, what did you think of the review overall? Didn't we already do this? Yeah, we did. I'm just trying to fill the airspace because we've got like 2 minutes left. Indeed. Well, I would have to say that the high point of the review was when he tried to give it 3 out of 4 but held up 2 fingers. Idiot doesn't know how to count to save his life. Indeed he doesn't, Chad. Well, that's gonna do it for now. Be sure to tune in next week for another exciting episode of Tommy vs. Reality.